We are excited to have Wing Lam as our guest on Tidemark Talks today. Wing Lam, along with his two brothers, Ed and Mingo, are the founders of Wahoo's Fish Taco, which is now the most recognized brand in its category. They have 50-plus restaurants and cater many of the biggest events in Southern California. Wing has a storied background and is the consummate marketer. I've had the pleasure of knowing him since high school. He is a relationship builder, business builder, brand builder, and a terrific guy. Stay tuned, and here we go. Welcome to Tidemark Talks. You know, we've set this up for learning and inspiration for entrepreneurs and small business owners. So it's a lot of fun. But to have you here, Wing, Wahoo's Fish Taco founder with your brothers, it's a thrill. Knowing you for so many years is just been wonderful. So
yeah, thank you, Wing.
Yeah, I know. Thanks for coming.
We're huge fans of Wahoo's too.
I know.
Yeah. We go there like 2 or 3 times.
Well,
a
I
week.
went there to lunch today just to get the mojo right. And by the way, we're just talking about your people. Okay, so the people you have are exceptional. I mean, I'm not saying that because you're here. They are, because you go in there and they remember you, but they're also very cognizant of service, but also very friendly, and they don't drop the ball. I mean, I would say your people are better than anybody, and the food certainly. But I mean, how do you get the right people, or what's the secret sauce in that?
Well, it's a combination of two. I always love to use the word tough love, right? You want to give them a lot of love. At the same time, you got to have them guidelines, right? So the metrics and the checks and balances. But the big key is, like in the world, in the Mexican culture, there's the word, mi casa is su casa. What does that really mean, right? Well, in plain English means it's not customers. These are our friends coming over for a bite. So imagine if you went to a friend's house, a good host who goes, "Hey, Jim, I remember you like vodka soda." He's not going to offer you a tequila soda because he knows you're a vodka guy, right? So these are all the little things that they remember. You're a white wine, not a red wine guy, right? They just remember these things. So we kind of say, hey, this is how we want to run our business. It's like this is your house. So even though you're the manager, you're the server, whatever, but this is your house. How would you treat your guests, your friends coming over? 1, remembering their orders. 2, remember their names. Remember every little thing about your customer, your friend. And pretty soon they're like, we get it. It's really cool, because now when you have a kid, when your wife doesn't come with you for lunch, you're like, hey, everything okay? So we know these things because you normally come with your partner, your wife, your kids, whatever, all this stuff, and they watch you grow up. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, where's Tommy? Oh, he's off to college. The next thing you know, they come home for the holidays, and there they are. So it's this whole family thing.
And it feels like that, and it's wonderful being there. And just mi casa, su casa, this just for introductions. To my right is my son Taylor and my son-in-law Basil, who really have been integral in getting our company off the ground. We're relatively new. We're 5 years in the making, but we're enjoying our ride with our property management, leasing, acquisitions company. So I just make those introductions while we're talking. And I know you've gone through this on other podcasts, but I love the story of getting your pedigree at least established for this little talk, because your parents, they went from China
to Brazil, right?
Yeah, but you got to tell the story of how they, it was kind of like a chain reaction of
It's kind of funny, though, is depending on which version you want, right? The one that we always laugh about is they got on a boat thinking they were coming to America, but there was the word SS in front of it, South America, whatever, right? But no, after World War II, because especially what happened in Pearl Harbor, right, in Hawaii, most of the Asians were not coming to America because of what had just happened. So instead, they were going to South America for a new opportunity. That's where, like in Peru, huge, like Nobu, all these great sushi guys got their formal training in Peru. So you see a lot of things that are unique about, some of the sushis that we're seeing today. It's not Japanese background. It's literally Peruvian. when you see a lot of the raw.
Jalapeno and
Yeah, like anything with I call it jalapenos, serrano peppers. That's not Japanese, so you know. Anything that's spicy, that's South American. Okay, and crudo would be the word that they use, but in Peru, in Japan they call it sushi, right? So it's raw fish, but it's being marinated. So my parents opened one of the first Chinese restaurants in Brazil after World War II. So the four of
But
us.
had they had food prep before, so they knew?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the long version of that is after World War II, my dad first went from mainland China to Hong Kong, and in Hong Kong he was really basically, instead of a hot dog cart, he ran a what I call it more like a Mongolian barbecue thing,
Yeah.
where there'd be a stir frying pot at the end. You pick up all your produce, meats, and all that, bring it over. My dad would cook it.
Wow.
Right. That's the Asian hot dog cart, right? So one of the things that happened was there was an elderly gentleman that would come at the end of every night, and whatever was left over, right? Meaning like all the ends of the vegetables, whatever it was, my dad would stir it, fry it, and make a fresh dish. But it was all basically the ends of everything, right? But it was still fresh, right? So this gentleman said, "Hey, I love you. Thank you for all you do for me, but you're wasting your talent here." He goes, "I have some friends that are in Japan. And prior to the war, he was a very well-to-do gentleman, but lost everything when everything went communist. So through that, my dad ended up in Japan. So there, he ended up running 5 Chinese restaurants.
oh wow.
Did really well. And the owner / partner, my dad, said, "Hey, if you marry one of the daughters, this is all yours." But my dad was already married in China. So he goes, "Well, thank you for the offer, but, no thank you." So my dad said, "Well, what's the next opportunity?" Because I kind of tapped out what I have here. So he ends up in Brazil. Wow. So there's about a 9-10 year gap between when my dad left and when my mom reunited. Right. So again, you have to have faith, all these things. So my mom goes, "Hey, all the other guys have gotten married, remarried along the journey. Some in Hong Kong, some in Japan, now some in Brazil. We're all stuck here in mainland China."
Right.
So my mom says, "I'm not going to stay behind."
How did she get out?
She basically followed my dad's cookie crumb trail. Basically, you got on a
Yeah,
boat and you
yeah.
kind of smuggled yourself out, right?
Okay.
And she ends up in Brazil with my oldest
Fantastic.
brother, who's now at the time 10 years old.
Right.
Never met his dad. And trust me, this is pre any information. You're just going on here's the roadmap and good luck to you. No Portuguese, no English, nothing but Chinese.
Yeah.
And somehow she finds my dad, and I literally joke the rest is history. Then there's a 10-year gap between my oldest brother and the rest of us. So he was China. The 4 of us were born in Brazil, and sometime in the late '60s, my dad realizes that maybe there's another real opportunity, which is America, right? The greatest country on earth. So my dad comes and has this aha moment that we all know as the John Wayne moment.
Right.
Here's the biggest celebrity in Orange County at the time, who happens to reside on Balboa Island, comes by the restaurant, and my dad takes a picture with him, and literally the world changes for my dad. We go from a restaurant that's basically running at about 10% occupancy to an hour wait to get in.
It's like the early days of the tequila endorsed celebrity.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
the
like,
first
Like we were
stage.
talking about earlier.
yeah,
First stage.
yeah. If you're a Patron, you're the first guy out of the gates. That was like they made a lot of money without having to do a lot of work.
Yeah.
Now you got to scrap for it because the competition is so fierce. So at the time, being the first Chinese restaurant outside of Chinatown was a big, step.
So would you have been 12, 13?
I was 13 and a half when I got here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you remember growing up in Brazil and
Oh God, I remember everything about it because I basically in the farms, in the restaurants, did all the things that a typical kid, And again, imagine nobody in Orange County that I know really rides public transportation.
Right.
But as a kid, we just took the bus, the metro, everywhere we went. Because my parents didn't have cars, so if you wanted to not walk, you had to take public transportation.
Right. And so the John Wayne, kicking it into high gear, so to speak.
Yeah.
You're 13, you're thinking not too much about that, or are you? Are you saying, wow, what an influence that has been on the restaurant? because it's not years until you start your own thing. I mean, it's many years from there.
Yeah.
So did that have any lasting sort of in the back? Because you became the marketing, the networking 101 guru, you know, so.
Well, I just remembered one incident changing my parents' life, right?
Yes.
And all of a sudden, I mean, our restaurant, I mean, it made us move from Brazil to here, right? So I always remembered it, but I had no idea, right, what it would do. So, but when you're studying business in college, which is what I studied, you learn about marketing, you learn all these things. I'm like, wow, you know, there's this thing called celebrity endorsement. But it usually costs a lot of money to get a celebrity to endorse your product, or unless you know them, right? So I chose let me see if I can meet these guys and find the customers that are kind of maybe somewhat of a celebrity. And that's, again, once we started, I always said, if I can just find my one John Wayne, I think we'll be okay. Because again, the same thing, like any business, you're kind of walking, you're not coming out of the gate making all this money. You're literally every day counts.
Well, and comment on that, because when your dad got on Balboa Island, he not only bought the restaurant, but he bought the real estate.
Yes.
And how he pulled that off without having a car, you tell me.
Yeah. So basically, we were making money in Brazil.
Yeah.
And we basically pulled some of our resources together. And this is what's very, in all the cultures, there's, I call it, there is no banking per se in China, in the old days. So everybody had to pull their resources, and you were the next in line. So you got to use the money. Then everybody put their money back in, and then you got to go do something with the pile of money next, right? So that's the whole idea. So we kind of pulled our resources and we bought the land, and I want to say it was like $100,000 then. And I can tell you that restaurant's worth a lot more than that today.
Right. Well, and we've seen a lot of that in our business where, and many times, I'd say the vast majority in the Asian culture, that is in fact the case. We've sold a lot of buildings to people that have pooled resources, and it's a family business, so they're getting the building controlled or owned. But then the next gen takes care of that and keeps building it and so on and so. So that's really cool. That's really cool, and that's cultural. I think it's something that's like you said. There's the banking is sort of
Well, it's just that interest rate in most countries are not like interest rates here.
Yeah, that's true.
Way higher, right? So everybody decides, goes, if we pull our resources together. But I don't remember in Brazil us ever getting a bank loan. I don't even remember what that would be like, because I don't remember.
Right. And then you get kind of moving along for you. You get into high school. Wing was the one of two Asians I think in our school.
Pretty much, yeah.
But well loved and but you're an athlete. You're some of that training, some of that competitive, because to build what you I was just thinking about this podcast and to build what you build. Yes, there's elements inside of you that maybe. How would you comment on what you learned through that process? Because you had to come to a new country. You had to work. You had to do a lot of things that the normal person isn't doing, and it's cutting you.
Yeah, so basically I joke about you spent the first half of my life trying to fit in. I've spent the last half trying to be as different as possible, right? Because today is cool to be different. But in the 70s, I try to be as conforming as you possibly can. You don't want to stand out. You just want to kind of get in. Nobody notice you, right? So that was the early years. But playing a team sport, really kind of say, hey, it's not about you. You're not going to win if not everybody's playing together, right? So you learn that, and it's true in business, because the weakest link is where the whole business goes sideways anyway, just like in sports. So I learned that. I mean, and again, luckily for me, we got a new coach, Carpenter, who had just started my sophomore year, and he basically said, hey, as long as you can play, there's no pre-existing, whatever. So he gave me the opportunity to play, and I did. So I ended up going from literally second to the last kid on the bench as a freshman to playing 3 years of varsity.
Yeah.
Which then again, and then being one of four Asian kids.
And to do that, you were training. You were doing, the kind of things you needed to do to get up. And he's an opportunistic coach too.
Yeah.
Letting people play and getting the right people.
What sport were you playing?
What was that?
What sport?
Water polo.
Oh, water polo. Okay.
Brutal. So again, and it should give you a really big, imagine like you had played tennis for how many years before you got to high school?
None. I started in high school.
No, you didn't. But I mean, you were the number
He's trying
one
to be a
player.
football player.
I played freshman football at Mater Dei.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I switched.
always thought that
and
you
I
played.
switched schools because I got interested in tennis at the end of my freshman year because I was getting my head kicked in on the football
Okay,
team.
well,
So I moved.
So you moved. Okay, so you and I would be very similar. So I played baseball of all sports. Our team was the Little League champion of Brazil when I was a kid.
Wow.
But I got here, and for some reason, it didn't feel the same for whatever reason, right? And then they said, hey, because you're from Brazil, you should play soccer. But I needed to learn English. And the best 7 kids on the soccer team were all Mexicans. And I already spent my entire day with them in the ESL classes.
Yeah.
So I needed to hang out with kids, and they literally, Coach Cutler, our history teacher, professor, comes to Ray Middle School to recruit. And he said, yeah, you guys should come, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. But he forgot one thing, because everybody said, yeah, we should go out water polo because it's just like soccer. Minor detail, you got to swim, right? So just like you,
Yeah.
I learned to swim when I was 13 years old.
Yeah. Wow.
So this
That's right.
So I literally get in there. Well, I can't swim, and worse, I don't understand a word the guy's saying.
Yeah.
So it was literally, and literally there were 7 guys that played. There were 32 kids on the Frost-Off team. On the depth chart, I was number 31.
Wow. Wow.
And then going from that to getting to play 3 more years of varsity, it was, people were like, this guy can't. Smallest, slowest. And the day I graduated, I was still the smallest and the slowest. But it was the stuff I did underwater that made up for it.
Yeah.
But in tennis, you can't do that. You got to be able to play.
Right. Yeah.
But in water polo, you can cheat.
Yeah.
So you got to make up. So figure out how you're going to make however you want to do just to get from A to B.
Yeah.
And I figured out how to get to A to B in front of everybody else.
Yeah. And pretty soon they knew they didn't want to be near you. They was like, no, I don't want to be near.
No, don't be near the Asian kid. He's a very dirty
crazy.
player. Yes. He's dirty.
Yeah.
It worked.
So
Well, it kind of played into surfing too.
yeah, that's what I was going to ask. When did you
So
start surfing?
I learned to surf basically after college because I dabbled in, I was junior lifeguard. I did all that. But literally one day, one of my customers after I started Wahoo, they're like, you surf, you serve the industry, but you don't surf. I'm like, well, that's because, I basically learned to play tennis, did everything else. I'm like, I'm over all this stuff. But I'm like, well, I can't be hanging out with a bunch of surfers and not surf.
Yeah.
So fast forward, today I surf on a shortboard. I'm not the best surfer, but I can surf.
Yeah, you get out there.
I learned, yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like all the sports.
Yeah.
I learned to play tennis because I hated to lose. And so I learned to play golf because I hated to, I learned to snowboard. All these things I had to learn,
Yeah.
you know.
But that cross pollination is kind of nice because you get to empathize with the athletes. You get to you understand what they're going through, and it makes you more competitive, and you kind of get it.
And I've been
That's fun.
supporting I love the minor sports because all the money is in football, basketball, and all that. But tennis, volleyball, whatever, you get less and less and less. And water polo, you get the crumbs left,
Yeah.
So I said, I'm going to see what I can do.
So you're in college, you're in business school, you're starting to learn some of these things. You're thinking, are you working in college while you go to school, or?
A little bit. I'm helping my dad out a little bit. He opened a restaurant in San Diego. And I call it, of all the jobs I needed, was mostly, you're going to laugh at this, I needed beer money, right? Because my parents didn't have the beer money.
Well, that's college.
So San Diego State.
Yeah.
So I basically learned that I could work 1 or 2 days a week refereeing water polo and swimming and make enough money to have beer money every week.
That's
so
all you need.
That's all I needed.
Yeah. And the tuition wasn't as much. The
No,
books were,
no.
It's all state school and stuff.
$500 a semester.
Yeah.
Then.
It
was cheap.
It was not
Different
much.
world.
Yeah. Housing was the most expensive part, but even then, in relative terms, I think my yearly expense might have been like $5,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
So sometime around 88, you get to the point where now you're ready, but how does the idea germinate to start your own? Because the parents are successful, they've got stuff going, and instead of just doing that, you come in here and say, no, we'll do something on our own.
Well, to give you like a little bit of about the time I graduated in '84, so 4 years before we started it, there was a movement. So my brother, who was an attorney, the oldest one, was doing some immigration paperwork, and he was like, hey, here's a new model for the new business. Basically, there were all the second generation restaurateurs, which included Michael Chang, not the tennis player, but Michael Chang in Irvine,
Yeah.
who had Walkman. Do you remember that on Cobra?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. So my brother designed the prototype new restaurants because if you go into any ethnic restaurant, people only order about 10% of the menu.
Yeah,
They don't get into all the funky, weird cuts of meat and all the funny stuff. The real Chinese or the real Mexican, they will eat that. But most of us were like, I'm just going to stick to the taco burrito and all that.
Yeah.
So there was another gentleman in LA that had a restaurant in Pasadena called the Panda Inn. As a second generation, he starts Panda Express. This is the story. So my brother's looking at all that, goes, you guys want to do the same thing? And I'm like, no, thank you. There's already two of them. And back in 84, 85, 86, the line was out the door on Culver to go into Walkman because it was kung pao chicken, sweet and sour. I mean, it was the 10 core
And it was
items.
active. They were doing the
Right
thing,
there in
and
front of you.
everybody's loving
But
it.
Yeah, quick casual, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't fast food because people actually cooked for you. So I saw that. My brothers, we all saw it. Goes, not a big deal. And we were all getting ready to go to law school. I had already gotten accepted, and we're like, hey, we're going to join the law firm. It's going to be a big immigration. But then it was like, maybe there's got to be something more fun. And then they said, what if we did this in a way where, like the sports that we enjoy, like surfing and all that? And then we said, there isn't that. There was the Hard Rock Cafe, Planet Hollywood, Rainforest Cafe. These are all the themed inspired restaurant. So you got this quick casual going on, the Chinese, and you got the theme for music and celebrities. It says, well, what if we did it for surfers? Nobody's doing it, right? Because the one thing you learn in business is find something a niche that nobody's doing.
Yeah.
So we're like, So my kid brother, Ed, I was already out for 4 years. I wasn't really having fun in the corporate world. Ed graduates, and we're like, hey, maybe we should do this. Because I don't think you want to go play in corporate, right? Because if you think I'm not having fun, you're going to have even worse, right? So it was like, I want to say around April or May of 88, we thought of it. We designed the menu. We literally wrote chicken scratch because you have to turn in for your business license the menu. So we're like, okay, we're going to do tacos, rice, beans. And then we go, what about the rest? He goes, well, all the things that we love, this is the way we're going to do it. So everything was basically home recipes. And we turned in the paperwork, got the paperwork done, and we found the old Italian restaurant, Luigi's, that was up for sale. And we said, well,
On Placentia.
On Placentia. And that was the way we used to go to the beach.
Yeah.
And then we said, hey, let's give it a shot. So November of 88, I remember we opened the day after the elections.
Wow.
And I want to say Bush Jr. had just gotten into office, and we were going into a recession.
Wow.
And people from the tennis club, the racket club of Irvine, where I used to play, they're like, are you guys crazy? And do you not know day one you're not Mexican? I go, yeah, we know that. And so everything that they said shouldn't work, at the very beginning, like for the first maybe 2 or 3 months, we're like, man, this might have been a bad idea, but we're here. What are we going to do? You know? And then things turned around because we found our John Wayne.
Yeah.
So did you see the surfing, skateboarding, like X Games trend like exploding like that, or was that something you weren't expecting?
No, we just saw that, hey, the surfers needed a place to hang out. So we're going to, instead of doing a hard rock cafe like music, we're going to do something for the action sports.
Well, one thing that's interesting was when you took over Luigi's, which is a house.
Yep.
It's on Placentia, and literally everybody from our high school goes to the beach that way and back and forth, and so do most of the people living in Costa Mesa.
Yeah.
And but going back to real estate, did you buy that at that time, or did you buy it
We
later?
leased it because we barely had enough money to open the
I was
doors.
going to say, because you leased it to get in and get up and running. Yeah.
So we had like I want to say about a 10, 15-year lease that we bought from the old tenants. But back then, leases were like dirt cheap. I mean, it was like maybe 50 cents a foot or something. Yeah.
But you put the money in to get it up and running, though.
Yeah, we spent like $30,000 to get it up and running because basically we converted everything that we could, sold all the old pizza ovens, whatever we could scrap, and traded for other used equipment. We didn't buy anything new. And we said, hey, this is what we need. We need a grill, a flat top, a 6-burner. We figured out we have the salamander where we can make the nachos in, and a fryer, right? So I said, hey, the rest, we'll figure it out as we go. And, I think the turning moment for us, So November, December, January. So 3 months go in. And literally, the head of sales for Billabong, which was literally across the street from us, comes in and like, you guys are still open. And literally he said, and I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I was here the day you guys opened and you guys look like you guys didn't know what you're doing. And we're like, well, we kind of still don't, but we're here. And he goes, I'll tell you what, have you guys ever done, a catering, And I'm like, yeah. And again, you gotta know what you're doing, even if you've never done it. You
fake it
have
till
an
you make
idea.
it.
Fake it until you make it. So we said, yeah, sure. So he goes, okay. In a couple of weeks, we got this thing called ASR, Action Sports Retail Show, and it just so happened to be the last one in Long Beach. And he goes, and we're going to have a buyer preview at our warehouse. So all the buyers from around the country and the world are going to be here, and we're going to do a little preview before we go to the trade show. So can you cater? So roughly about 120 people between the employees and the buyers. I'm like, sure. So we literally set up a taco stand in their parking lot and cooked things literally with the old mesquite, the whole 9 yards. I mean, this is before gas and all that. Yeah. So, the whole charcoal and the whole thing. And people flipped out because you would not have it. I mean, by the way, not health approval, none of that, because this is open, right? Yeah. But it felt like you were literally on a street corner in Mexico. And people loved it. So from that, Mike...
And instead of getting a soggy sandwich, they're getting fresh food.
Yeah, fresh tacos, rice and beans, right? So Mike basically said, hey, thank you for doing this. By the way, there's this really cool trade show in Long Beach. And by the way, for the next 2 to 3 days, you're going to be slower than molasses. And I go, why? Because all these companies that are here, the Quicksilvers, the O'Neills, they're all going to be there. So you're not going to be busy. So why don't you come by the trade show? And I'm like, okay. So we do. And at that trade show, how all the surf brands promote their brand by giving out stickers. Now, as a kid, going into a surf shop, they're like $2, $3. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm not going to buy any stickers. They're too expensive, right? But here, they were giving them away. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. I'm like a kid in a candy store. And I'm putting the faces of my customers to the brands they work for. So there's a guy from O'Neill, there's a guy from Quicksilver, because they're at the booth. And I go, oh, yeah, I've seen you on my store. Goes, oh, I didn't know you work here. And halfway through the trade show, every other person's going, hey, Wing, a buyer just came by here and told me you did this at Billabong because they were there. It was the best tacos they've ever had. And I'm like, okay. Because I didn't know you guys did that. Can you do something with us? He goes, yeah, sure. So all of a sudden, I got all these leads. But at the same time, our store then, when we opened, was bare. I mean, there's just a few things on the wall, but nothing in relative terms, right? I said, hey, by the way, what are you doing with these banners, all these signage when the trade show is over? He goes, if you come here on the last day, you can take it.
Wow.
And I'm like, I'll be back on the last day.
Yeah. Wow.
So
wow.
I then, after the first day, I went back to the restaurant, put up some stickers. So if you go to Placentia, starting from the front door, you go to your left, all the window panes on the inside, they all have original stickers from 1989.
Oh, cool.
Other than some were covered by other stickers. So I started doing that, and I put a couple of signs up from Billabong, Vision Streetwear, Quicksilver, and all the other brands goes, one, I didn't know we could tag your place. Sure. Two, I didn't know that we can promote our brand just like a surf shop did.
Right.
So that was the beginning of the movement, because all of a sudden it looked like a surfer hangout.
Right.
And it still does, even like when you go to the mall, you know.
You replicate it.
Yeah.
I got to jump in and tell you too that. So I grew up in Wisconsin, and like Taco Bell was exotic. There was nothing like this there. And I met Jess, my wife, Jim's daughter, in Ithaca, New York, at school. And so my first exposure to Wahoos, you jumped on the sticker train at some point with your own Wahoo stickers, and she had a bright orange Nalgene, water bottle with an I Heart Wahoo sticker. Yeah. And to me, it was like this mystical thing, like, what's Wahoos? What does Wahoos mean? Fish tacos. We barely have chicken tacos, much less steak tacos or fish tacos. Yeah. So it traveled from Orange County to New York to a Wisconsin boy, and then here we're sitting today. But it worked.
It worked. The sticker is like this brand. We joke about it. It's like the dog peeing marked their spot. The sticker is that.
Yeah.
For a grown-up. And around Orange County, all the surf companies would tag all the back of the street signs, and it's 100% illegal to do. So we never literally try to, sticker public property. But in the restaurant, it became this like, hey, I like this moment where I can tag because I was here and this is my spot.
Right,
Okay?
right. Well,
good.
and they had, so Placentia opens up, and then you get down to Laguna Beach.
Yeah.
And was that a rental too at the beginning, and then you bought it?
It was a rental for a year,
Okay.
and then we bought it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you'll probably remember that. So I don't know is that when you came out, and certainly you'd probably remember before it was remodeled, you'd be standing in line sideways on the
Oh, yeah.
stairs. Going, and the guy's coming up with the food, and everybody's salivating. You're like,
Yeah.
in the bottom line in all this, when the two stores, and we started to talk about the Sawdust Festival, that also, to me, it just seemed like it started to gain momentum. I mean, Costa Mesa was big, but I mean, Laguna, kind of the surf, like you guys are saying, the surf theme.
Yeah.
Did it start to take shape?
So what happened was after the Laguna Beach, things are beginning to move because Costa Mesa doesn't have a beach after its city name, but Laguna does, Laguna Beach. And plus, you're in the most localized street in Laguna Beach because Oak and Brook Street is where the surf is in Laguna, right? So everybody kind of took notice, right, that we were now a beach restaurant, right? But it wasn't until, I want to say, 91 or 92 when we opened Bristol. That changed everything because now all of a sudden you had a restaurant where you're on, the corner of Bristol and Baker, and there's a lot of traffic. And every day at lunchtime, the line went out the door.
Oh, it was crazy.
And then everybody goes, what is this place?
Yeah.
And, a line attracts people.
Yeah.
So as soon as you see a line, well, I got to go there. So then all of a sudden, all the suits, I call them, that were working around the metro area, remember, they grew up in Orange County, and they're like the belonging to the days of kids and going to the beach. So for that half-hour break, it's like you went to Mexico. And that was the beginning of where everything started changing.
Yeah.
So Laguna gave us that beach name. And then right after that, we opened Huntington Beach. And then things really started like taking a life.
Well, and Bristol Baker was like you're saying, a little bit of a shockwave to the market too, because of the line and because of the people. I mean, the lunch hour extended. It went from 11 to 2 because people were trying to find parking. But the prior restaurant, I think it was like a French place, was dead as a doornail. It never looked like it had anything. And then when you guys opened, not only was it noticeable, but the look of the place changed. There was a lot of and it was pre-lab, pre-camp.
Oh, yeah.
And
We are the
but
reason
that was the
lab.
cool.
Yeah.
Exactly. That was the cool start of that. Yeah, it seemed.
Because everything was on the other side of the 405 where South Coast Plaza was. And even around South Coast Plaza, Metro Point was not what it was yet. Even the Village, it was all dead except for South Coast Plaza.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we come in and like, well, maybe there is, something to be said. But I remember all the Nordstrom girls coming in every day. And it was like, again, you got all these girls all dolled up,
Yeah.
And which is really funny is the guy that ended up, and I want to use the word directed or produced, The Mask and a bunch of Jim Carrey's movies. He married one of these girls from, Nordstrom's. And I remember seeing him early on. And I'm like, okay, this is nice. And he said, oh, I got this great movie, da-da-da, whatever he was. And I'm like, okay, good luck to you, right? And the next thing I know, I see his name in
Number
all,
one
yeah,
movie.
yeah, number one, yeah.
Wow.
So again, a lot of that stuff, because people are like, hey, I'm an affordable restaurant. It's good. I can come here every day. And I like, especially the girls at Nordstrom, yes, they make good money. But even if they could eat at the mall at half off, it was cheaper to come to me.
Very.
And you get more food.
Yeah.
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 Which location did the blue door come from? Because I think of like the blue painted doors in the Wahoo.
It was just one of
It
those
was
where
just a
we
thing.
just, all these crazy ideas. Goes, hey, we should try painting this, and yeah.
Well, as a sidebar, I told these guys that where the lab is, we had the listing on that property, and Shaheen came in under a lease option arrangement because he had relationships with, I believe, some of the big retailers,
Urban Outfitters.
Urban Outfitters and others, and did a great job with the vision, putting it together. But a lot of it was played off of Wahoo's because he could see, he went anti-mall on his branding, and it was kind of interesting. But it was walkable then. They not only could they go to lunch at yours, they could go down there, and there was a little bit of reciprocity. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, no, Shaheem came from the action sports industry, so he knew us, and it was just one of those, hey, I can play off. Because at the time, for I don't know how many years, we were the only guys on that side of the freeway that did well. Everybody else was like, you know.
Right. And really, I mean, like some of the new items, maybe they're not as new as for you, but like citrus slaw taco, shrimp taco. I mean, the guy who did that, and maybe that's your recipe, should get the Nobel Prize. It's so good. I mean, the food, because the food is, it's one thing to be great brand, and it's one thing to be out there, but the food's phenomenal.
It's a good product.
It's a great product.
It's all of us, like, because if you eat it enough, you go, maybe I need this, and it's just, I call it fusion of all of us having input, but my wife has a lot to do with it because she's like, hey, would it be better if you did it this way? The other brother's like,
so it is family kind of getting involved.
And then a lot of the employees, because back in the day, everybody goes, hey, I'm going to cook it this way. I'm like, that's another way.
Yeah.
And so when we started, it was just grilled fish.
Yeah.
And before you knew it, there was Cajun fish. And before you knew it, there was crispy fried.
Yeah.
So these are all the evolution, because and some of it you want to say, well, if I want to be healthy, I want to eat it this way.
Yeah.
But if I want to have more flavorful and as a treat, I got to eat it this way. And that's all it is. So just all of us being grown up, you don't want to eat nachos every day. It's not really that good for you, right? But as a treat, once in a while, it's nice to have that pile of cheese, like a pizza, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the themes of our podcast and just kind of like generally the clients that we have, is family businesses. We're a family business. We work with family businesses, so, maybe just speak to that about working with your family. I know for us, it's, strengthened our relationships. Sometimes it can
And we've never
destroy
had a
them.
problem.
Well, I mean, there's unique challenges with it, certainly. But has that been the case for you? Was it difficult?
I would say there's the mutual, I call it admiration part, and then there's the idea that, hey, you're going off early to go surf kind of a thing, right? So we all have to decide, hey, we all work and we all play. So there is no, hey, you work while I go surf kind of a thing, right? So I think, and also like to play to each other's strength, right? Because a lot of the details like banking, accounting, all the legal stuff, my kid brother, I'm not sure if he enjoys it, but he's good at it. So you naturally, right? Like for me, even though I do all the marketing PR, you're going to laugh. I've only taken one marketing class in my whole life. But
You're
you
teaching
learn.
the class now.
Yeah, and then I teach it on top of it, which is even funnier. So I teach marketing, and people look at me and go, you're a professor? I goes, yeah, I'm a professor, but I've only taken one class that I teach, right? But what you learn is the survival and the networking. So those are the things you can teach. You got to learn it. It's called the street smart stuff. So by doing all the stuff that I had to do, so trust me, early on, I'd be like, oh my God, this is not easy. And I would say like back in the adoption guild days, right? In the chalk tennis tournaments at RCI, because I was a member there forever. One of the first parties that I did there, right? I'm doing the food, and I would say the players' party was like 300 to 500 players, blah, blah, blah. So it's a lot of work for us to donate that kind of work. So let's just say we donated about $5,000 worth of work. And this is like early 90s, right? Then I noticed that we have one little banner, on the basketball court area set up. And I noticed there were 10 Coors Light banners. And I'm like, okay, they donated beer. But I'm looking around and goes, okay, how much beer did they donate, right? So let's just say they donated 10 kegs for 500 people, right? I'm like, okay, nice sizable donation. But let's look at the real cost. One, they delivered. They have zero labor here because the staff at the club are pouring the beer.
Yeah, that's right.
And then in 1992, 93, a keg of beer was $50. So they donated $500 worth of product. I'm donating $5,000, and they have 10 times the presence that I have. So then you learn to go, okay, I'm going to ask questions. Do I get my signage? Do I get my logo? In other words, if I'm going to do all this in kind, or whatever you want to call it, how am I going to get those customers back if they don't know that I'm here? So then you start learning. I goes, okay, let's all be on the playing field. And I ask questions. Goes, okay, how much beer? And this is what they did. I goes, do you see how many banners? I give you 5,000. Shouldn't I have 10 banners here? And they're like, you're right, you're sure. Right? Yeah. But now here comes the second part. Beer companies can make their own banners. They have all the production in the house. For me to make 10 banners, it would probably cost me another $1,000. So then I'm like, okay, I already got 5,000 in. Do I want to spend another 1,000 in, right? So now you got to figure it out. Goes, can I get them to make the banners? So you start learning and asking questions. How does this thing work? And where am I spending money? Where am I getting recognition? So you start learning. So I learned a lot about marketing and branding by asking questions. Because at first I'm like, okay, they did it. So in terms of activations, fast forward, for every event that we do, it costs about 2 to 3 times more to actually activate and have a presence there. So if you donate $1,000, it'll cost you another $3,000 for them to know that you're there. So all of a sudden you're like, whoa. So you got to be really good at what you do in order to let people know that at the end of the day, you're doing it to drive traffic back to your business. So in anything you do is like, hey, what's the ROI on it?
Right.
So that's where I started thinking. It goes, it's not that I'm a smart marketing guy. I'm a smart money guy.
You were in some of your teaching mode. You talk about that, about, what am I doing to make their life better? And at some of the surf events, you would talk about that. Speak to that a little bit, because I think that was also a kicker where all of a sudden the event isn't at the end a deflating moment. It's a networking, social engagement. People are eating your food. Talking, because I thought that was brilliant.
So back in the day, right? So when we went to college, right, we got the experience of the tailgate. And there's the tailgate, meaning your roommates and your neighbors. Then there's the fraternity sorority tailgate. And then there's the alumni tailgate. Alumni don't want to come back to a game and eat hot dogs. They want to maybe eat a carved prime rib. They want to eat something that's a little more, premium, right? So I got to see all that firsthand at an SC Rose Bowl game, and I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like, I'm glad somebody else is paying for all that so we can come in and, be a guest of. But I remember going, this is expensive. The ABC, catering, all these big television network. So coming into action sports, I always imagined it would be the same. Well, it turns out action sports, minor sports, if your parents didn't bring you something, bye-bye, good luck to you, And most like water polo, it was cookies, muffins, brownies, and to me it was a treat, but I was like, wow. But if they didn't bring those to parents, you're shit out of luck, right? There's nothing for you to snack on the way home. So I remember all these little things that I had, these treats. So coming into action sports, I had a meeting with Billabong because now we did their trade show. And I'm like, hey, coming into the summer, you're going to have this little kids, local Grom contest. So do you have a little budget for hospitality, like having me come in to do food? And they all looked at me and was like, are you kidding me? After we buy the jerseys, pay for the judges, build the scaffolding, and get the permit, there's nothing left. And I'm like, so what does that mean? He goes, if you don't bring your own, you're out of luck. So I said, well, if you don't have a budget for it, can we do something? He goes, well, like what? He goes, can we trade for it? And they looked at me and goes, you're going to take T-shirts and shorts. What are you going to do with that? He goes, well, I got vendors. I got suppliers. So and all of them have kids, right? And they're like, okay. So we said, we'll give you a bunch of T-shirts and hats and shorts, and you'll give us food for, like, say, 100 competitors, staff, and all that. Well, yep, that's it. Fabulous. So after the first one, people are like, oh, my God. And this is where we go back. What was the surfer meal in 1988, 89? If your parents didn't pack you a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, it was a bologna cheese.
Well, it had to hold up because you're on the water, so it had to be something like that. Yeah.
It was terrible. So it was in your backpack, right? And it was soggy.
Yeah.
So you have soggy peanut butter and jelly sandwich, soggy Oscar Mayer bologna sandwich, or you got hot food. There was zero competition. And nobody thought, it was, who is the dodo head wheeling all this equipment to the edge of the water? Because from the parking lot to the surf contest, it's a good 100 yards. Yeah. It's not 10 feet. And that equipment weighs even more on the sand because there's no wheels. You have to carry it. So I did that, and people looked at me and go, that Asian guy's a little low, right? But when we're serving it, all the kids that were at that contest, not all of them surf for Billabong. They surf for O'Neill. They surf for Quicksilver. They surf for Gotcha. They surf for Stussy. They went back and told their team manager, he goes, if we do a contest, you got to call this guy Wahoo's. And he goes, well, we don't have any money. He goes, I heard he trades for it. So all of a sudden, we're doing Quicksilver. We're doing Gotcha. We're doing Stussy. And these are the biggest action sports brand on the planet. And those are the little, I call it mom and pops This is way before the U.S. Open, way before the X Games.
They all became advocates of your brand.
And the kids, fast forward, if they weren't on the world tour, they went to work behind the scenes at these events. So how do you think I got into the U.S. Open? How do you think I get into the X Games? Because it's a very expensive sponsorship. But by having the guys on the inside that love you, they're like, Wing.
They just want to watch.
We like Wing here.
Yeah, we'll find a way to get you in the back door.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you're building that through that great marketing mindset, this creative mindset. You have your locations being set up. Basically, at that point, I'm just saying when Costa Mesa was set up, very eclectic. I mean, you're getting, Luigi's, and you're getting a house down in Laguna, and you're getting a French restaurant that is underparked, right?
Yeah.
So then you make some other real estate decisions. I mean, for real estate, just for learning, you may be in the malls now in different places, but you're not like Panda Express where it's cookie cutter in a certain type of situation.
No.
So is it opportunistic, or how do you make
A little
those
bit. The first, I would say, 10 years was a lot more opportunistic than anything, but where customers were coming from. For instance, like Lake Forest. Why do we end up in Lake Forest? Because Oakley was there, and they're like, and so was Gotcha. And they're like, Wing, we're sick and tired of driving all the way over here to Costa Mesa, right? So maybe you should come over here, right? And that's literally how all the stores grew, right? They're like, oh, we're driving all the way here. And literally, the reason we ended up at South Coast Plaza was because Anton Segerstrom was like, this is unbelievable. You need to be in my mall. I'm like, why? I'm on the other side of the freeway from you. I'm good.
I was going to ask how you got in there.
Yeah.
That's not an easy task.
No. So Anton says, we're all grown up. He goes, well, what would it make it worth your while? I goes, well, if we can get a deal that makes sense, right? So if there's an upside, great. But if I'm wrong, because you're going to stick me in the backside of the old Crystal Court and all this stuff, goes, nobody's ever going to find me here. So he goes, but I'll give you a great deal. I goes, okay, we'll take that risk. And if you can read back in the Orange County Register at the time, the article basically said we lost our mind. Why would we take a deal like that?
Yeah.
And the rest is history. It's one of our best performing stores.
Yeah. Well, and like you're saying, you're going for those because the foot traffic or at least accessibility is a little bit.
And we can drive our own traffic. So we were not waiting for them. Yeah. We said because our biggest issue at Bristol was parking.
Yeah, right.
And I said, I'm going to take the spot on the second level, unheard of, that a restaurant that was the Garden Bistro, I think it was the name of the place, it was empty for 3 years. Right. So we basically said, hey, look at this parking lot. We have a whole structure to ourselves. Yeah. And people looked at it and goes, you're crazy. Nobody's ever going to see you here.
But for the customer, they go once, they know, so they're fine. It's fine. Like you just got to get them there once.
We just have to get them there once. Yeah.
And so those decisions play into one question on expansion. Was it all privately funded? How did you kind of, because it's a lot of growth in a very short period of time. I mean, to pull that off. It was
we were generating enough cash flow to basically just keep every other year, opening one or two. But the key here is we were very profitable then because labor wasn't crazy like it is today. Workman's comp wasn't crazy like it is today, right? So there are a lot of things that weren't there, today, back then. And the competition, there was none, right? People looked at it and goes, who wants to be in that segment anyway, right? So no competition in relative terms, other than other like Italian or Chinese or whatever, but no real Mexican quick casual.
Yeah. And is that the challenge today, cost and dealing with inflation and so on?
Yeah, basically today, everybody would be the same. It's like rentals are at an all-time high. So real estate is a big component because once you sign, you're on the hook forever, right? And then you got labor and food costs. So all three of them do not make it easy today to be in the food industry.
Yeah. And kind of weirdly, as markets cycle, I mean, if they're talking about South Coast Crystal Court, if we have a down cycle, in kind of a weird way, that's not a bad situation for you guys because you get better deals on your real estate at that point.
Yeah.
And the opportunities come a little bit more easily.
Yeah.
So I've kind of seen you take advantage of that. And what are, like for you, when you look back, what are some of the things, the qualities that you and your brothers, just that you have that you think are unique? I mean, clearly networking, clearly marketing. Behind the scenes, is it setting up great systems? And what is it that, because it's a lot of growth.
The big thing is communication, right? So you may have a great idea, but if the dishwasher doesn't know that that's your idea, so not only having a great idea and communicating it, make sure you get buy-in from everybody, right? Everybody's got to be moving in the same direction. So no different in sports, right? You can run a best play, but if not everybody understands the play, you're going to get killed, right? So making sure that the communication is key, and always make sure that, you're looking at trends and trying to always stay ahead of it. Don't try to go, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't see that coming, right? So right now, in a perfect world, this generation doesn't like to order food from a person. They'd rather order through an app, right? So you always got to stay ahead of these trends because, okay, how do we make it easier to do that? And one of the ones I can honestly say today that we're behind is because of the transition from our new POS system was supposed to have been done a year ago. So guess what we still don't have today? We don't have Apple Pay.
Oh,
And that's a huge problem for kids because they don't carry money.
right.
So we probably lose, probably 10 to 20% every day just to Apple Pay. It's a simple.
They won't come because they don't have that ability to pay
They,
that way?
no, they don't have cash.
Oh,
So they only go to places that they know take Apple Pay.
oh.
So these are the little things that you'd
Yeah.
be amazed. So convenience, so there's a lot of things that, one, we fixed, and a lot that we're playing catch up still.
Yeah. When comparing, your concept to some of the other known ones, I won't necessarily. You can name names, but it's fresh. It's clean. It's better.
Yeah.
So you're cognizant of that at all times, kind of thing.
Yeah. So one of the things is like looking at all the people that, our age, right? The issues that they're having, right? Overweight is one big one, right? And what causes that? I'm not sure exactly, but yeah, maybe should exercise a little bit more. But look at what you're eating, right? What is the makeup of what you're eating? And a lot of it is because it's processed. So people think sometimes processed food is what comes in a little potato chip bag. Well, processed food could be made in a commissary, and you think you're eating fresh food,
I see.
but it was made somewhere else. The major issue with that is the number one preservative in food that is being processed somewhere else in a commissary is sodium. And because it's the most natural preservative. So what's the big issue for a lot of guys? High sodium, right? So again, you're going to go, wow, but that food tastes amazing. It goes, yes, but it probably has 25, 50% more sodium than you should have, right? So that's one of the big ones. And then you got all these other words, fancy, I call them stabilizers. Well, that's to stabilize a food from going from A to B.
Yeah.
Otherwise
Keeps it longer
known as preservatives. So do we need all those extra things? So for us, we try to minimize the things that need to be transported, right? There's a few things that I say, you know what? It can be refrigerated, not a big deal, and it's not going to, from what I make, and if I had you make 3 gallons of it, there's not going to be any difference in what the actual product is. But if I had you make pico de gallo, which is fresh tomatoes, by the time it comes to me, it's not even come close to what it started as.
I see.
So you need to do things to it to hold the tomatoes in place.
Yeah.
We were talking last weekend, Wing, and I asked you kind of like what you're doing now, what keeps you busy, and you said you do a lot of charity work.
Yep.
My question for you is, people have an idea at the beginning of the entrepreneurial rainbow of what they think the pot of gold is.
Yeah.
What's the actual pot of gold at the end of a successful entrepreneurial rainbow? Because I think it's probably different than what most people think at the beginning.
Yeah. I think one of the coolest thing is everybody thinks by making money, it's the answer. It's part of it. It allows you to arrive in style, but it's not the answer, right? So, let's just use, things like, hey, would a lot of guys even look at you if you didn't show up in your Lamborghini? Would they even, let you get a table, right? So there's a lot of things that money can buy, which is awesome, right? But there's a lot that you can't, i.e. being the number one player at UCI. You got to earn that, right? So earning your place in life as opposed to paying for it is a big thing. So when you look at people that are having their midlife crisis, it's because they're missing that little piece. Because I call it purpose, whatever you want to call it, right? And that doesn't mean anything. I mean, it could be good at playing guitar. It could be whatever it is that you're good at, right? That people want to go, oh my God, you make the best margarita, or you make it. It doesn't have to be like a profession, but it just has to be a hobby. But anything that people know you for, except for that pile of money.
Well, and I think it's so interesting too because I've known you for a long time, and kind of we've been busy with our lives and admired from far, but we know each other. So when you look at what you did during COVID is a labor of love. It's you talk about love drive. You can talk a little bit about. I mean, that was phenomenal because everybody's hiding, and here you are. You're out there.
Yeah. So basically, because before COVID, I spent about half of my time doing charity work anyway in events. Well, when COVID hits, 100% of what I spend my time on is gone. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to sit around and do nothing, right? What am I going to plan for? Because a lot of what I do in the office is plan for the next thing. Well, there's no planning going on. But because we had food that was going to expire anyway, I says, well, why not go out to the hospitals and drop some stuff off? So I do that a few times. And then my friends basically call me from KLOS, all of my neighbors, and goes, hey, Wing, we see you doing this. Are you crazy? Aren't you supposed to be at home? And why are you going to a hospital where all the sick people are at? He goes, because I can. But I got gloves, I got face masks, I got shields. I'm being very, very conservative on how I do it. And they said, well, maybe we can start a movement. So my idea was just to deliver the food. But then Yogurtland comes in, Hint Water comes in, Cliff Bar comes in, and Monster Energy Drink, because these are all my event
And
friends.
promoted by KLOS, right?
And KLOS, because Heidi and Frank basically said, hey, Wing, how can we help you? And it says, I don't know, we need money. He goes, how about we start the GoFundMe? We didn't ask them. They said, we're going to start this for you. And that GoFundMe page has been hundreds of thousands of dollars till today. So with a little bit of money, we're not trying to make money. We're just trying to cover the hard cost of doing this. We said, but we can't be Wahoos because there's 5 of us. And I said, well, what do you think? So Wendy said, what about we call it the California Love Drop? I'm like, He goes, yeah, what we're doing is we're spreading the love. I'm like, sounds great. So here we
Fabulous,
are.
yeah.
And so we've started out with a few, and then literally Loan Depot comes in because one of my friends that I have helped, she goes, Wing, I see what you're doing. Can you use some of our money? I'm like, yeah. And if you remember, 2020 and 21, the best years in the loan business in the world.
Yeah, right.
And they were flush with cash, but nothing to do. What was the other category? Home improvement. Bear Paint, the CFO of Bear Paint is one of my fraternity brothers. So these companies, I didn't call them. They say, hey, I heard you're doing this. Can we help you? He goes, well, I can't go deliver paint. He goes, what about if we give you money? Well, that works for us. So everybody would come and just, well, and then I would say, but we don't have to go to the hospitals. We'd be happy to go to hospitals that you know. So somebody goes, well, my such and such works at this hospital, or my cousin, or my brother, or my wife. I'm like, we'll go there. So imagine coming in, with somebody's husband, and there's his wife or their neighbor, and here we're bringing food. The whole place just lit up.
Fantastic. What a joy.
All
to them.
because you're fearless and you started the initiative.
And I can honestly say it wasn't until a year later that actually people got sick, COVID, but nobody got it from a delivery because we were very, very particular on how we handled everything. So nobody touched anything unless you had gloves on and masks on. So most of the people that eventually got sick, including myself, is because we went on road trips.
Yeah.
In 21.
But even so, spreading the joy like that, and you're walking the walk. I mean, and this goes back pre-COVID.
Yep.
He's Wing's the keynote speaker at the Diocese of Orange Business and Ethics Breakfast.
Yep.
And you talked. I remember that it was a great talk. You got up there and talked about communication, relationships, and giving back, and that was all within the context of what you've done in kind of your business, your life. And I think that goes back to that question you were just asking, which is, enjoy the journey, maybe?
Yeah, enjoy the journey and the moment. Because literally, I've been around with so many people that are worth billions, but you can tell that there's something missing. And I don't know exactly how to tell them, but dude, go do something meaningful. It doesn't mean go write a check for $1 billion, but just make an impact. Because when you give the gratitude and the energy you get back, you can't buy that in any store in the country, right? So that's the stuff that gives you purpose. It makes you like, wow, I was able to change somebody's life by just doing this little thing. So it's this little acts. You don't have to write big checks. But when you can change people's lives whatever that means, it changes the world. It just, everything becomes better. You know?
And you said that in we were teaching at one of the colleges about what are you doing to make someone else's life better.
Yep.
And one of the things we found when we started our company was we had a lot of really wealthy property owners that had lots of assets, lots of money, but they weren't enjoying anything about it.
Yeah.
So we're trying to build a company around that to make their lives better, to make them have them enjoy the hard work they've put in with their real estate and time and energy and cash that they put. So we're having fun with that because we take that to heart, just trying to mirror the great companies like yours that are out there, and it's been a lot of fun. With that said, are there influential people, books, things, anything that you would that stood out? I mean, you're here with your dad. This is, I tried to grow it this morning, but you've influential people that have really made it. You mentioned something. I was mentioning to these guys. Bill Lee was my mentor when I was at Lee and Associates, and it's interesting that you said that way. He said to me one time, he said, no matter how much money you have, it's never enough. And what he meant by that was enjoy the competition, enjoy the ride, enjoy the heat, enjoy what you're doing, be more professional, keep working at what you're doing. And it's a true story. And he was a wonderful man, but influential people that maybe, whether it's folks or outside or,
Well, besides my mom and dad, which are amazing, right? It's like Coach Carpenter, literally, give me the opportunity to play. But a lot.
And you're giving back to Estancia now.
Oh God! I mean, I've been supporting their program since I graduated, right? And but to me, it was like looking back, it's like, what are people doing out there, right? So recently, I've been going to a number of networking events, and there was a guy that I kept bumping into. And I'm like, okay, I got to figure out what he does, right? So finally, at the last event a couple of weeks ago, I find out what he did, but I still don't know what he does, right? But in it, he talks about that at 6 years old, he did his first fire walk, which is what Tony Robbins does, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, and somewhere in the conversation, he's talking about how they were grooming him to replace him. And I'm like, okay,
Wow.
that is big.
Oh, man.
Big, shoes to fill.
Yeah.
He's probably
Literally.
one of,
Figuratively.
literally, the guy has big feet.
6 feet,
So after we got done, we started talking, and I go, so how is that possible that at 6 years old you can afford to do this? Because to go on the firewalk weekends is not a cheap date. He goes, well, 40 years ago, my father's the one that taught him how to do it.
Whoa.
So now all of a sudden,
Wow.
it changes the way you see somebody.
Yeah.
Because in my head, I go, now this makes sense. Because at every one of these networking events, you and I are always speaking together, right? So we sat down, afterwards, we chit-chatted, goes, we can really do some fun stuff together.
Very cool.
So people like that because it's not like they're manufacturing anything. They're basically inspiring people to find their purpose and overcome their fears, whatever it is that they want to do. This is what it is, because in order to walk about, 10, 15 feet on hot coals, it takes a lot of faith and a lot of overcoming your mental, wherever that means, right? So to me, something like that is, and I've never really been impressed by a whole lot of, people that speak in public, because I'm like, making money, selling houses, whatever all that stuff, that's great. It's a good gimmick. It's a great way to make money, flipping and doing all these things, right? But at the end of the day, I just don't see the purpose, right? I mean, other than making money again, right? But seeing this guy and meeting him, finally figuring out what he did and where he came from, I mean, that to me is exciting. Because to be able to talk to somebody to walk over fire, that takes a lot.
Wow.
So you can do it?
Yeah, I'm going to do it. Yeah. So now,
that's
because
great.
I asked him one question, he goes, because he does smaller versions of the big one. He doesn't do 100,000 people. He does like a couple of hundred. And my question to him is, do you happen to have a celebrity chef at your events? He goes, no. So I'm going to be it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's
you got to make the event better.
Yeah.
And I think I can make it better.
Yeah.
So I'm impressed. So they're the things. So and again, Jim, I mean, why did I agree to come out here? Is because it goes, hey, I see what he's done. So
Thank you for coming, by the way.
Yeah,
thank you.
And that's what we do. Is like, hey, how do we inspire, right?
Yeah.
And again, going to church is awesome, but doing what they tell you to do is different.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you, there's plenty of people who go to different churches, and as soon as they leave the church, it's like, They forgot what the message was. I'm like, how did you forget? You don't know what right from wrong is?
Yeah.
They forgot.
Yeah. And that has to be embedded in your life too.
It's a lifestyle. It's not a like,
None of us are perfect, but you got to keep working at it.
yeah, I'm only going to do it when it benefits me. It's which is
Right.
what most people do.
Yeah. And that's a great lesson too, just having that attitude of service, that communication, those relationships. And you know, we, like I said, we left school, you know, early. We both went and got busy at very different things, but I've been an admirer literally from afar forever. And I'm so glad you came out. It's, I mean, I don't know if you guys have any more questions. I don't want to keep.
No, that was great. Thank you, Wing.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's amazing too. I was talking to, I think it was Bert, one of your employees today. I went to luncheon over in Irvine, and he's such a great guy, and he's back and forth from the various stores, keeping an eye on things, and it goes back to people. You got great folks.
What we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we take care of them.
How do you train them? I mean, do you is it just on the job kind of?
A lot of it on the job. I mean, we have the, like I said, these are the expecting, the duties of your job, right?
Yeah, they do.
And then just always just checking up on them. And again, recognizing when they do a good job.
Yeah.
Recognizing when they don't, and just make sure, like I said, that tough love. Don't
a good
kill
takeaway.
them, but just just got to be always on it.
Yeah. Fun stuff.
It's just been great.
Thanks, Wing. We're glad you came out.
I'm glad.
And blessings to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.